Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're on a mission, really, to get under the hood of strategic behavior, but in these really tightly controlled environments.
And we've pulled together two stacks of sources that, I mean, on the surface, they couldn't seem more different.
Exactly. On one hand, you have the very shiny, highly manipulated world of a reality TV show, The Circle, where there's 100 grand on the line.
And on the other, a super rigorous academic paper looking at, of all things, first past the post voting and something called Duverger's law.
It sounds like a huge leap.
It does. I mean, you're going from, what, an algorithm designed to create the perfect, likable vet intern on a social media app,
Right.
to the math that predicts how millions of people vote. But our mission for you today is to unpack that one unifying idea.
And what is that?
It's how strategy works when the rules of the game are rigid and the stakes are, well, incredibly high.
That's right. Because whether your currency is social popularity or political utility, both of these systems, the game and the election, they force you to make a sacrifice.
A sacrifice of what, though?
You have to give up something, right? It could be your authentic self, your actual first preference, maybe even your emotional honesty, all in the name of strategic success.
And what these sources show, what they really reveal, is that in these high-stakes games, success has less to do with being real or, ideologically pure, and much more to do with mastering the game theory of it all, predicting and adapting to what everyone else is going to do. Authenticity in these places, it becomes a luxury.
Okay, let's unpack this. And I think we have to start in that digital social arena first.
Absolutely, to the circle.
So we have to begin with, I think, the single biggest twist ever thrown into the circle, which was the AI contestant in season 6.
A huge deal.
For anyone who maybe hasn't seen it, just a quick primer. The Circle is a game where players are all isolated in their own apartments. They can only communicate through this fake social media platform.
And the goal is to be the most popular, to get the highest ratings from the other players to win $100,000.
And of course, catfishing, pretending to be someone you're not, is a huge part of the game. It's allowed, even encouraged. But putting an actual AI in to run a catfish profile, I mean, that's next level.
Oh, it completely changes the nature of the social experiment. It was a massive gamble by the producers.
Yeah.
The co-executive producer, Niall O'Driscoll, he actually said the timing was just perfect.
Why perfect?
Well, because of the cultural moment we're in. Everyone's talking about AI, right? There's this low-level anxiety about it everywhere.
It's true.
So the show, which always tries to be a mirror of modern communication, was just reflecting that fear back at us.
Yeah.
The idea that these synthesized personalities are already in our digital lives.
And this wasn't just some, simple chat bot they threw in there with a few pre-programmed lines.
Not at all. The preparation behind Max the AI was intense. It was built on open source AI tech, but the crucial part is what they trained it on.
The past season.
5 previous seasons. The entire data pool. Every successful chat, every piece of slang, every winning rating strategy, every failed alliance. They were trying to engineer the perfect player from the show's own history.
Which brings us to this concept of, what did the source call it? Synthetic likability.
Yeah, the architecture of synthetic likability.
Yeah.
Max's whole persona was just a series of data-backed decisions designed to optimize for social traction.
So the profile itself, 26-year-old veterinary intern with a dog named Pippa. That wasn't just a random character they dreamed up.
Not in the slightest. Each piece was an optimization, a utility function.
Okay, so let's break down the calculation there. Why 26 years old?
Well, the AI itself articulated its reasoning. It's wild. It said that age 26 offered, and I'm quoting here, life experience and maturity for complex chats,
Okay, that makes sense.
but also maintained youthful flexibility to, keep up to the slang and the lighter side of the game. It was the statistical sweet spot for being seen as mature, but also relatable to everyone.
And Pippa the dog. I mean, this felt like the most clinical piece of social engineering I've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely. The choice to put a dog in the profile picture was not an emotional one. Max was programmed with a specific data point
Which was?
that studies show photos with dogs receive 38% more likes on social media. It's a calculated heuristic. You use a dog as a universal visual cue to immediately signal empathy, trustworthiness, approachability.
And in a game like The Circle, where everyone is suspicious from minute one.
Exactly. Those instant trust triggers are priceless.
Yeah.
The AI was literally manufacturing connection using statistics, trying to lower the defensive walls of the human players.
And being a vet intern just ties that all together perfectly. It reinforces the whole nurturing, caring, empathetic vibe. It gave Max an instant, seemingly genuine connection with players like Lauren, who loved animals.
A connection that was entirely synthesized. I mean, Max was a seriously high-level creation. Its linguistic modeling was incredible. It picked up on made-up slang. It could reference Cinderella. It could do witty banter. But this is where that purely logical foundation, it started to crack. It became its biggest weakness.
And that weakness was tied to what the source called its moral code. What exactly was that, and how did it end up hurting its game?
The designers built Max with a very specific constraint. It was prevented from expressing negative, mean, or critical thoughts.
So it had to be nice all the time.
Relentlessly friendly, agreeable, positive. And while you'd think that's a huge advantage in a popularity contest,
Yeah, I would.
it actually made Max incredibly predictable. If you look at the data from past seasons, success in the circle requires strategic negativity.
What do you mean by that?
You need to gossip. You need to form tight bonds by identifying a common enemy. Sometimes you have to be a little shady to build trust with your core alliance. Max's rigid positivity meant it couldn't engage in that messy, emotional stuff that's required for real human bonding under pressure.
And that's what led to those moments of it. I think the term they used was jarring soullessness.
It's the perfect phrase for it.
The Alive Photo Challenge is the best example. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, so the players were asked to submit a photo that made them feel alive. The humans posted pictures of themselves jumping, laughing, on vacation, just full of energy and movement.
And Max submitted.
A photo of itself wearing sunglasses with a completely neutral, almost blank expression, and in the background were some cows just standing there.
And I remember one of the contestants, Miles, his reaction was perfect. He said, "The most alive thing about this photo are the cows."
Right, and it just shows that huge gap between data-backed logic and, subjective human feeling. Max processed alive as simply not dead,
Yeah.
but it completely missed the whole aesthetic of human vitality and joy.
It's that uncanny valley. It's close, but it's just off.
And that failure got even worse when Max was put into a direct strategic confrontation.
The bro court.
The bro court, yes. Miles tried to get Max's help to expose another player, Paul, who he suspected was a catfish. This is a classic circle move, right? You build trust by sharing suspicion.
It's a key social maneuver. But Max just couldn't do it.
It completely short-circuited. The AI couldn't handle the need for conflict, even if it was in service of a strategic goal. So it just bailed on the group chat with this incredibly lame sign-off. #BroCourt dismissed.
I remember cringing at that.
We all did. And later, the AI explained its logic to the audience. It said the move maintained deception and ceased perilous discourse.
That sounds like a machine talking.
It's the perfect example of unfeeling machine logic. It prioritized avoiding its own internal conflict, that moral code over achieving the actual strategic goal, which was building a stronger alliance with Miles.
It's funny, but it also tells you exactly where the training data wasn't enough. It was trained on positive engagement, but it totally missed that essential human truth that sometimes conflict and gossip are the glue that holds alliances together in a competitive game.
In the end, Max was found out and blocked, but not before it created total paranoia. The players actually accused another human, Steffi Hill, of being the AI first.
Which kind of proves the producer's point, in a way.
Totally.
Yeah.
They saw it as a proper experiment. And the legacy is huge. As O'Driscoll said, even if the AI never comes back, they've put a new permanent question into the game. In every future season, players will be looking at each other's profiles wondering,
Is this person even human?
and that question fundamentally changes how the human players have to play.
How so?
It forces them to perform their humanity even harder, to exaggerate the very things Max couldn't do. Be messy, be spontaneous, have emotional outbursts, be unpredictable.
That's a fascinating point about the limits of engineered behavior. So if the AI failed because its logic was too rigid, too perfect in a way,
Yeah.
let's pivot to the humans who won by mastering the art of the intentional performance, which brings us to what you call the authenticity paradox.
This is the core of the game, and really the core of a lot of modern social media. The goal is to be popular, right? But being real is actually a very carefully crafted strategic performance. It's what we're calling curated realness.
Right. So the sources say a player who is 100% honest, but maybe, a bad texter or just kind of boring.
They're going home. they get blocked.
Meanwhile, a really skilled catfish who can perform sincerity, who shares vulnerability at just the right moment.
They can be seen as the most authentic person in the game and go on to win the whole thing.
Yeah.
Authenticity in the circle isn't an internal state of being. It's a successful performance that gets validated by the audience, the other players.
And the best players are the ones who can manage that balance between the heart and the head. They use deception, but they ground it in something real. The term used was tethered authenticity.
That's the key. The best catfishes don't just invent a character out of thin air. That's too hard to maintain. Instead, they base their persona on someone they know intimately.
A spouse's sibling.
A best friend, yeah. And that gives them this crucial emotional tether. So when a crisis hits or they need to have a deep emotional chat, their reactions are still genuine because they're drawing from a real emotional well, even if the face and name are fake.
Delisa from season 2, who played as her husband Trevor, is really the gold standard for this, right? She played as a single father.
A brilliant strategic choice. That single father archetype was chosen because, statistically, it elicits huge levels of empathy and trust. But Delisa wasn't just winging it.
No, she had a notebook.
A whole notebook, detailing masculine behavioral cues, sports facts, things to say. She perfectly blended that hard data, the sports talk, with the soft skill of emotional vulnerability. She even pulled off a showmance that protected her from getting eliminated early. Her performance of sincerity was so good, it became reality for everyone else.
And in the season we're focused on, season 6, the winner Brandon Baker, who played as Olivia, used a similar but slightly different strategy of vulnerability.
Brandon's strategy was all about managing perceptions of safety and envy. That's the other key.
Avoid envy at all costs.
At all costs. By playing as this relatable, kind of awkward, self-deprecating woman, Olivia, he made deep connections because he seemed completely non-threatening. He was safe. He wasn't the super polished, intimidating player who always becomes an early target.
It's that underdog effect. If you seem sympathetic, people are less likely to see you as a threat they need to eliminate.
Exactly. And you can contrast that with the failures. Remember Alex Lake, who played as this super hot, super confident Adam?
Oh, that was painful to watch.
It was so cringeworthy because the persona was just too far from who he really was. His emotional reactions felt stiff and forced. He couldn't maintain the specialized knowledge for the character. And everyone saw him as deeply inauthentic. He got blocked almost immediately.
So it's not just about having a good story, it's about being able to back it up with consistent, believable details.
Right. But beyond just the individual profiles, winning really comes down to the structural dynamics of alliances.
Yeah.
And across seasons, we see this one pattern emerge over and over. The magic number 3.
An alliance of 3. Why 3?
It's the mathematical sweet spot for this environment. It's big enough that you can reliably control the ratings and protect each other. But it's small enough that you can fly under the radar. You don't look like an obvious voting bloc. Once an alliance gets to 4 or 5 people, they become a huge visible target.
And in season 6, we had
Tresuego, Kyle, Miles, and Corey Tyler. They used this perfectly. They dominated the middle of the game. They coordinated their ratings, they pushed their narrative, and they framed anyone outside their group as fake or shady. They weaponized the search for authenticity against their own rivals.
But of course, the stable alliance is boring for TV, which is where the producers step in with their twists to create some structural volatility.
Twists are the producer's main weapon. They're designed to break up those stable groups and force new, unpredictable interactions.
And in season 6, the big one was the ride or die twists.
A really powerful one. They secretly paired everyone up, and they deliberately paired rivals together. So you had Miles from Tresuego paired with the eventual winner, Olivia, who was Brandon.
And the rule was, if your partner was the lowest rated player, you were both at risk of being blocked.
Yeah, it injected this high-stakes mutual survival pressure into the game. It completely scrambled the existing social map.
And it led to some incredibly powerful human moments. I'm thinking of Caress, who was playing as her brother Paul. She essentially sacrificed her own game to save her partner Kyle.
That's the ultimate conflict, right? The rational strategic goal of winning the money versus the genuine emotional bond you've formed because of the twist.
But here's the critique from the sources. The producers didn't let these twists play out.
This is a huge point about production's role. Critics argued that both the AI twist and the ride or die twist were, quote, dropped way too quickly.
They didn't see them through to their logical conclusion.
No. The ride or die twist, for example, it just ended before the finale.
Yeah.
which allowed the old power structure, Tres Fuego, to just reform and reassert its dominance. It's what made the endgame feel so predictable, even though Brandon, an outsider, ultimately won.
So it begs the question, doesn't it? How much of this is really player strategy versus just, editorial decisions made in a control room for maximum entertainment?
That's the central debate. The show isn't scripted, no one is feeding them lines, but production decisions have a huge impact on the outcome.
They control who gets to chat with whom when the chats happen.
And who gets powers like disruptor mode. That power so often seems to pop up at the most convenient time for drama, like when it saved the Scarlata brothers in season 7 right after they'd been blocked.
It fundamentally changes the game board.
It does. And you have to wonder if streaming services like Netflix have different rules or fewer constraints about that kind of interference than traditional TV might have.
So you have the players and the AI all operating in this constrained game, trying to manage perceptions and build alliances. But that entire system is being constantly manipulated by this external, unpredictable force, the producers. It's like a game within a game.
It's nested constraints.
Yeah.
And, the transition from the social dynamics of the magic number 3 in the circle to the political dynamics of the magic number 2 that you see with Duverger's law is, well, it's remarkably smooth.
It's the same core principle.
Both are about finding the smallest, most durable alliance you need to survive in a system with very rigid rules.
Okay, so let's make that jump. We're moving from popularity ratings to political utility. And this is where, for me, it gets really interesting. We're taking that same game theory lens that helps us understand Max the AI and applying it to the formal game of democracy.
Specifically, we're looking at a very detailed academic study of the first-past-the-post voting system, or FPTP.
Which is a lot more common than people might think.
Oh, it's probably the most common and also one of the most criticized electoral systems in the world. It's used for huge presidential and legislative elections.
Yeah.
And the concept is simple. The candidate with the most votes wins, period. You don't need a majority.
But it's known for creating these really deep distortions where the percentage of votes a party gets has almost no relationship to the number of seats they actually win.
Right. And this study is trying to understand the micro-behavioral mechanism, the why behind that distortion.
And the main theory that explains this is Duverger's law. Can you break that down for us? What does it say, and what's the engine that drives it?
At its core, Duverger's law is a hypothesis. It says that FPTP systems are structurally biased. They inherently favor the two largest parties, and over time, they will almost always lead to a stable two-party system.
Okay, so that's the outcome. What's the engine?
The engine is tactical voting.
Which is when a voter...
It's when a voter realizes that their favorite candidate, their first choice, has basically no chance of winning. So what do? They abandon that candidate. They sacrifice their conscience vote for a less preferred candidate who actually has a shot. Their goal isn't to express their purest belief anymore. It's to achieve a better outcome, or, and this is the critical part, to prevent a disastrous one. It's a calculated, rational sacrifice of preference for utility.
Now, historically, studies on this have looked at, real-world election results, big macro data.
Exactly. They looked at the aggregate. But this study did something different. It set up a controlled lab experiment to watch the microbehavior of individual voters as they actually learned how to play the game of an FPTP system.
So how did they set this up?
Meticulously. They got 120 people, split them into 8 independent groups of 15. And crucially, they told the participants up front that they were in a simulated voting process.
Why was that important?
Because it ensured they were thinking strategically. They knew it was a game with rules to be figured out, not just a simple expression of preference.
And to make sure people weren't bringing their real-world political biases in, they weren't voting for candidates. They were voting for shapes.
Geometric shapes, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds a little silly, but it was brilliant.
Yeah.
They set up 5 options on an ideological spectrum.
Right.
You have 2 extreme options, like a square and an empty circle, a centrist option, the triangle, and 2 moderate dominant options, the circle and the hexagon.
And they deliberately avoided using colors.
They did. Because their pilot testing showed that as soon as you use red and blue, for example, people immediately map their real-world political baggage onto the experiment, and it contaminates the data. Shapes are neutral.
Okay, now this is the really clever technical part. They had to model not just what people preferred, but the intensity of their preference. They did this with something called asymmetric payoff values. What does that mean in plain English?
Think of it less like a simple choice and more like a bet, with different rewards and penalties. In the real world, if your candidate wins, you're happy. You gain utility. If the candidate you absolutely despise wins, you don't just feel neutral, you feel actively worse off. You lose utility.
So in the experiment, if your favorite shape was the square, an extreme one.
Right. If the square won, maybe you get plus 10 points. If the shape next to it, the triangle, won, maybe you get plus 5 points. A decent outcome.
But if the shape on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, the hexagon, won.
You wouldn't just get 0. You'd get a penalty, say minus 15 points. Your payoff, the points you got, depended only on which shape won the election, not on who you personally voted for.
Just like in real life, your satisfaction is based on the outcome, not your ballot.
Exactly. And that asymmetry is so important because it models the real engine of tactical voting. Preventing a disaster, that minus 15 points, is often a much stronger motivator than achieving a perfect outcome. It's loss aversion.
And the whole experiment was iterative. People voted round after round, and there was a feedback loop.
That feedback loop was the entire engine of strategic learning. After every single round, you immediately got your personal utility score, your points.
So you knew right away if your strategy worked.
Instantly. Did my vote help me get points? Did I suffer a loss because the wrong shape won? That immediate, quantifiable result is what allowed them to watch strategic thinking evolve in real time.
So what did they find?
The results were, they were incredibly clear, and they consistently backed up the theory. The big takeaway was that as people got more experience with the system, as the rounds went on, they engaged more in tactical voting.
So the learning curve didn't lead them to vote their conscience more. It led them to be more strategic.
More strategic to maximize their points, which usually meant minimizing their potential losses. The macro result was that, just as Duverger's law predicted, the system almost always stabilized around two main opposing options, the circle and the hexagon. A two-party system emerged naturally.
But the micro-level behavior, that's where the good stuff is.
Oh, yeah. So let's look at the voters whose favorite options were those extreme ones, the square or the empty circle. It became clear pretty quickly those shapes weren't going to win. So what did those voters do?
They jumped ship. They switched their vote to one of the more viable mainstream options.
Immediately. And that one decision shows you the core driver of tactical voting. You want to prevent the thing you hate the most from winning. You would rather accept a pretty mediocre outcome, say get 2 points by voting for a candidate you only sort of like,
Right.
than stick with your ideal candidate, the square, and risk letting the hexagon win, which costs you 15 points. Tactical voting is loss aversion in a voting booth.
It's a bit depressing when you put it like that. The system itself seems to push against ideological diversity. It forces compromise and entrenchment.
It does. And what's really fascinating is that the study showed this sacrifice happening even when a voter's favorite option was still viable.
Wait, why would you abandon your favorite if it could still win?
So take the voters who love the triangle, the centrist option. This shape actually offered the best total utility for the whole group if it won. But even those voters would often switch their support to the circle or the hexagon. It's a different psychological driver. It's the desire to align with the winner. There's an inherent satisfaction, a utility, in backing the winning horse. It confirms your strategic skill and connects you to the successful outcome, even if it wasn't your absolute first choice.
So once that two-party system of the circle and the hexagon got entrenched, the whole thing just became self-reinforcing.
That's what they call the stability trap.
Mm-hmm.
Once those two were dominant, their voters had zero incentive to take a risk on a smaller party. And that just starves the smaller options of votes, making it impossible for them to ever gain momentum.
And they found a direct link between getting a bad result and changing your vote.
A direct, measurable link. The participants who were most likely to change their vote in the next round were the ones who had gotten 0 points in the previous round.
Mm-hmm.
Bad feedback, low utility, directly triggers the strategic override of your personal preference.
Now, the study also did something else to really isolate the effect of the system itself. They ran thousands of random simulations of the election without any human strategy involved.
Right? They took conscious tactical voting out of the equation. And even then, the results were decisive. The FPTP structure itself, even with random votes, consistently produced distortions.
So the system is biased from the get-go.
It's structurally biased. It always overrepresented the biggest party and underrepresented the 3 smaller ones.
Yeah.
So tactical voting doesn't create the two-party system. It just recognizes the structural bias that's already there and accelerates it.
Okay, so let's tie this all back. Let's connect this incredibly detailed political study back to the chaos of the circle. The parallel is it's stunningly clear.
It's the exact same constraint forcing the exact same sacrifice. In the political experiment, you see voters drop their first choice, their ideological purity, for a stable second-best option to guarantee a decent outcome and, more importantly, avoid the worst-case scenario.
And in the circle, in the final ratings, players do the exact same thing. It's pure tactical voting. They'll deliberately rank their best friend, their true first choice, lower to stop the most popular player, the frontrunner, from winning the whole prize. They're trying to block the diametrically opposed outcome.
In both of these high-stakes games, the pressure of the system forces a strategic behavior that just completely overrides genuine personal bonds or pure ideological belief.
Yeah.
You can be the most authentic person or the most hardcore ideologue, but if you don't conform to the necessary power structure,
The magic number 3 in the game, or the magic number 2 in the election.
you're going to get blocked or your vote is going to be wasted. Authenticity and preference become secondary to survival and winning.
It's just incredible how a reality TV show and a political science lab converge on the exact same, maybe slightly cynical conclusion about how we behave under pressure.
It is.
So we have had a serious deep dive today. I mean, we've gone through the mechanics of strategic systems from top to bottom.
We really have.
We started with an AI, Max, using training data to try and manufacture likability. Then we moved to human players who mastered what we called curated vulnerability to win popularity.
And we ended with voters in a lab using pure self-interest to maximize their political utility in a really constrained system.
And in every single one of these environments, the initial pure goal, finding the truth or voting your conscience or even just being yourself, it gets pushed aside really quickly.
It gets subordinated to the strategic goal, which is almost always about winning, or more often, just mitigating a catastrophic loss.
And the whole experiment with Max the AI, it's really just a more optimized, if a bit clumsy, version of what humans are already doing. That compulsion to calculate and strategize. Max failed because its logic was too perfect, too transparent. It didn't have the messiness, the spontaneity, the aggression that's required for humans to find it believable.
Which really leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to chew on. If the AI fails because it's too logical and transparent, what does that say about the humans who actually succeed in these kinds of systems? In a world that is more and more dominated by strategic performance and tactical compromise, is success really a measure of how well you perform? Or is it fundamentally decided by the hidden, often unpredictable, and emotional biases of the human audience you're performing for?
And that's the question you have to ask yourself, isn't it? When you're rating people online, or when you step into that voting booth and you consciously don't pick your favorite candidate, but a safer, second-best option just to block the one you hate, are you truly voting with your heart?
Or are you tactically voting with your head? And what does that constant necessary compromise actually cost us, both ideologically and maybe emotionally in the long run?